Lesson 7.2, dividing monomials. The first thing we're going to look at is quotient of powers, which talks about division. When you're dividing two bases that are the same, all you need to do is subtract their exponents. Let me show you what that looks like with some letters or some numbers. So let's start with x to the fifth over x squared. X and x are the same, so all you have to do is subtract the exponents. 5 minus 2 makes 3, and that's the answer. And this also works with numbers. For example, 2 to the 7th over 2 to the 4th. Both 2 and 2 are the same, so subtract 7 minus 4, and you get 3. And then you should work that out and change it to the number 8, because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Now if you have more than one variable, like a to the 6th, b to the 5th over ab squared, you simply subtract the a exponents and subtract the b exponents separately. So 6 minus 1 makes a to the 5th, and 5 minus 2 will make b to the 3rd power. So subtract the exponents when it's division. All right, let's look at the next slide. Here's two examples I'd like you to try. Go ahead and subtract these exponents. Okay, so if we take the 3 and the 2 from the x and we subtract that, we'll get 1. So that's just x, because we don't need to write the 1 there. And then for the y's, 4 minus, well, we don't have a number, so that really means there's a 1 there. 4 minus 1 makes 3. So our answer is x, y to the 3rd power. Now with example B, K has a 7 and a 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. For the M's, 10 minus 3 makes 7. Now for the P's, they don't have numbers, but 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 means I shouldn't even see a P. So if there's a P on the top and a P on the bottom, we can just cross those out. They will cancel each other out, and our answer is k squared m to the 7th. All right, let's move to the next slide. Power of a quotient. Now what you're looking at is a fraction that's raised to an exponent. Now if there is a fraction, that exponent goes with the numerator and the denominator. So whatever is on the top will also be raised to the same power that the denominator at the bottom is. Let's look at a small example. Let's do 3 over 5. That's a fraction. And let's square it. So you need to square 3. 3 times 3 will make 9. And you need to square the denominator. 5 times 5 is 25. And this works with variables. If you have a squared over b cubed, and you want to raise that to the 4th power, then the 4th will have to interact with the a and the b. Now remember, when there's an exponent outside and inside, they will be multiplied together. So 2 times 4 will make a to the 8, and 4 times 3 will make b to the 12th. And this works when you have numbers on the top and variables on the bottom. For example, like say you have 4x over y squared, and you want to make that to the 3rd power. Well, the 4 needs to be cubed. 4 times 4 times 4 makes 64. Now the x doesn't have an exponent, so it needs to be cubed also. So you would write x cubed. 64 is from 4 cubed. X cubed is from the x being cubed. And then on the bottom, remember if you already have an exponent, times those together, and then you'll get y to the 6th. All right, on the next slide, there should be a few examples for you to try. So go ahead and take a moment and work out these 3 problems. Okay, so the 3 is going to come in here and cube 3. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Now the 4 and the 3 are exponents. They get multiplied, and that's x to the 12th. And then the 3 is going to come down here and cube the 4. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. And that's the answer to the first one. Now in the second one, the 2 is going to come in here and square the 5. 5 times 5 is 25. And then the 2 is going to have to be multiplied by the 5 because they're both exponents, and that makes 10 for the x. Now, y doesn't have an exponent, but it does now. It gets that 2 because y needs to be squared. And then on the denominator, the 6 also needs to be squared. 6 times 6 is 36. So there's our answer, 25 x to the 10th, y squared, all over 36. And our last problem, 2 comes in here and squares 2. 2 times 2 makes 4. The exponents get times together, so that's going to be y to the 4th power. 2 is going to square the 3. 3 times 3 makes 9. And then the 2 exponents need to be times z to the 6th. And that's the answer for the third one. Now let's take a look at 0 exponents. Zero exponent will turn any number, variable, or expression into the number 1. So if you see a 0 as an exponent, 624 to the 0 turns into a 1. If you see a fraction, 3 over 5, it's raised to the 0 power, it also turns into a 1. If you see a decimal raised to the 0, it also turns into a 1. If you were to see a variable raised to the 0 power, it would also turn into a 1. Now, as long as there's parentheses around the negative number, then it too will turn into a 1. However, if there's not parentheses, the 0 will only turn the 5 into 1, leaving the negative sign. So you will get negative 1. So if there's no parentheses around a negative number, it comes out to be negative 1. And then with this last one here, those two negatives don't cancel out and become positive, because first has to happen is the exponent 0. Now the 0 turns what's in the parentheses into a 1, but it does not change the negative that's in the front. So the answer again is negative 1. So anything that has a 0, we can just cross it out and turn it into a 1. But be careful of the negative signs. And the last thing we want to look at are negative exponents. Negative exponents are fine during your work, but any answer that's submitted must have positive exponents. So there is a way to turn any negative exponent into a positive exponent, and it's about moving its position. If a variable is on the numerator, as x is, If you move it to the denominator, that 3 will become a positive 3. And since you need something to go on the top, we'll put a 1 there. So if an exponent is negative, move it to the denominator, and that will turn it into a positive exponent. Now, if the variable or letter or number is already in the denominator, your job is to then move it to the top. So the negative 4 will turn positive when you move x to the negative 4 to the top, and then it becomes x to the positive 4th. Now we don't have to write this as a fraction anymore. We can simply just write it as x to the 4th without a 1 on the bottom. Now all of this works with numbers also. You see 5 is in the numerator. Move it to the denominator, and it becomes 5 squared. Now you can actually work that out. You should not try to square a negative squared. Only square positive squared. So 5 times 5 will make 25. And again, if the numbers on the bottom is already negative, you can make it positive by moving it up, making it 2 to the 4th power, and then working that out and getting 16. So negative exponents all need to be positive before you submit your answer. All right, the last slide has got a few examples for you to try. So I'd like you to subtract exponents. That's the first thing we learned. I'd like you to get rid of any zero exponents. And I'd like you to make sure that all of your answers have positive exponents, not negative. So take a minute or two and work out these 4 problems. Okay, so you see this little negative 4? I'm going to move that x to the denominator, and that made a positive. Now, y to the 9th, that's not negative, so it stays y to the 9th. However, z to the negative 6, that's negative. So it has to come up just like x came down. So on the top, I'm going to have z to the 6th, right behind my y to the 9th. And that's all you can do to this problem, was to make the 2 negative exponents positive. In B, we have a 0 exponent actually. Anything with a 0 turns into a 1. You're gone. Don't need that there anymore. Now for the second part, we've got exponents for the same base. So 3 minus 2 is 1. So 1n. So n is our answer. In C, there's only the v on the top. Since it's negative, I will immediately move it down and write v cubed. I have w and a w. 2 w's can be crossed out because 1 w on the top, 1 w on the bottom. Now x squared is positive. So I'm just going to leave that up here on the top because there's no reason to move it. Now, the y to the negative 6th, however, it is negative. So it's going to have to come up. So behind the x squared will be a y to the 6th power. And lastly, in D, B, and B, so I'm going to subtract those. 4 minus 2, that's 2. C and C, 2 minus 1 is 1c. And finally, d to the 0. Anything with a 0 turns into a 1, so it's gone. So that's our final answer, b squared c. All right, and this is all about subtracting exponents, getting rid of 0 exponents, and making all of your exponents positive for your final answer.